Hi everybody. I am Anna Brown. I'm the events coordinator from Katie Budget Books. I am super excited about this event. Those of you that are local to us know that our tagline is be a part of the story. And so one of the things we're doing with our events now is trying to make them more about owning your own story. And what I love about the book we're featuring today is it's very much about the stories that get told about us and the way that we can come out and reframe that story so that it's more true to who we are as individuals. So I am really excited today to have Aparna Shewakramani in conversation with Amrutha Jindal. I feel like I messed that up.
You're right.
Aparna Shewakramani is a lawyer who holds a JD from Vanderbilt Law and a BA from Rice University. The breakout star of Netflix's hit series Indian Matchmaking, Shewakramani became an overnight ambassador for women demanding to be heard in their love lives, workplaces, and in every space they occupy. She is the founder and owner of the luxury travel company My Golden Balloon. She lives in New York City, but she is from Houston, or not from, but she lived in Houston for a while. Amrutha recently took a job as the Chief Defender of Operations for Operation Lone Star, Chief Defender of Operation Lone Star at the Lubbock Private Defender's Office. So I had a longer bio for her, but it was at her old job. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about herself. And then I'm just going to let these ladies chat until we do the audience Q&A at the end. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us, Anna.
Thank you. Yeah, I am so excited to hang out with all of you guys tonight and to talk about Aparna's new book. She's Unlikeable. As Anna mentioned, my name is Amrutha. I live in Houston, even though my job is technically based out of Lubbock, but I'm a Houston native. I was born and raised here, and I had the good fortune of meeting Aparna almost exactly a year ago, which is kind of crazy because it feels like it's been longer. Well, we met almost a year ago when she was still in Houston before she had moved to New York. And we quickly connected, had a lot in common. And it was really interesting because it was my first time meeting someone and becoming friends with them after I actually knew them from a television show or from some other kind of platform. I don't think I'd ever had that experience before. So I, like so many people, watched Indian Matchmaking, loved the show, binged it. And it's just a real honor to be here speaking with Aparna today about her book, and it's an even bigger honor to call you a friend. So thank you so much for
doing this today. You're very special to me too because you're local, but you're also a book club leader. Am I wrong?
Yes, I do. I run a book club for a group called the Good Girlfriends Club. So if you haven't heard of them, you can check them out on Instagram. And it's just a group of women in Houston who gather to socialize. But one of the things that we do once a month is a book club. And it's really fun. We meet up at different locations and bars around the city and read a really wide range of books. And we always read books that are written by women. So your book is very on theme with that.
That's awesome. And I need to join a book club one day. So if I'm back in Houston, I will consider yours.
If you're back in Houston, yes, please do. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I feel like sort of the standard question that everyone starts a book tour conversation off with is, what inspired you? What motivated you to write this book? So I'm going to go with the flow and just kind of start with that question.
Yeah, so the book kind of came out of a very particular moment, or a few weeks actually, where after the show came out, it was a flood of DMs. I would say maybe it was thousands a day. I'll tell you that. It was thousands of DMs a day. I wouldn't read all of them. I would try to get to as many as I could. A lot of them were spewing hate. You know, I was one of the most polarizing characters on the show, or my portrayal was. And a lot of them were spewing a lot of love. And I thought that was really interesting. With polarization comes both sides. And when I focused on the ones from women mostly that were filled with admiration and, congratulations, they all had kind of the same baseline question, but how did you become this way? And I thought that was a really interesting point, because I realized then that they knew nothing about me except these snippets on the television show, which don't actually explain anything before or obviously after. And so they see me in this kind of silo and they're like, but wait, what happened? Like, how did you, become strong enough to say what you wanted so clearly? How did you become this confident? How did you sit up there and say, you didn't care if a man rejected you, like something must have happened to you. And so the book was born out of a response to those questions, a collective question of how did you become this way? And as I looked for memoirs, about South Asian women in particular to read, I realized there was no memoir about a woman that resembled me. I didn't have a example to go on. I had gorgeous memoirs from people like Priyanka Chopra. I knew Payal Kadakia was writing one at the time. They had, accomplished so much. They had started unicorn companies that were valued at over $1 billion. They had been on our screens for years. And I loved that. They were aspirational to me. Those women are incredible. But there was no story about me or someone like me who is still struggling and failing and growing, and whose story is not ending or not starting with a milestone, but in fact working towards an unknown milestone. And I thought, I wonder why women of color, even, because then I expanded the search, because they're just women of color doing this, and there's not that many. And I feel like women of color don't deserve to tell their story until they accomplish the big thing, whatever that thing is.
Right.
And I thought that was so sad in a way. Like, our stories are worth telling. And so then the bent of the book not only became explaining how I became this way, but hopefully getting others who were reading it to reflect on the importance of their story and the ways that they have also experienced grief and loss and struggled, and the ways that they have also triumphed from those things and come out stronger on the other side. And my goal and my hope is that there's a bookshelf soon full of memoirs from South Asian or just women of color who are telling their story as it occurs, and not just at the end of it or at the end of some arbitrary milestone part of it. So that's where it was born. I hope I did it.
Yeah, no, you absolutely did. And I think that's one thing that anyone who's read the book loves about it. It's incredibly relatable in a lot of ways, even though many of us, most of us, all of us have not had the same kinds of experiences in life that you have. There's something just about your honesty and the fact that you're still in your journey as you described, rather than kind of saying, oh, here was my journey and I'm done with it. Like, the fact that you're still in it and sharing the ups and the downs and what brought you to this place is a really relatable thing and a really vulnerable, beautiful thing to read as a reader. Which kind of leads me to my next question, which is about vulnerability. Being on a reality TV show requires a lot of confidence and just a lot of, just knowing that you're going to be putting yourself out there. That there's going to be judgment. And the same is true with writing a book. I mean, you're putting your words out into the world. And I feel like that requires a certain level of strength and willingness to be vulnerable and to show who you are. I'd love for you to share your experiences with that. Where does that strength and confidence come from? And does it scare you? Like, did you feel nervous when you were going on the show or when you were putting this book out into the world?
I think ignorance was really bliss. I did not know I was signing up for a reality show. I was told multiple times this was a docuseries that would highlight the best parts of my culture and also give me an opportunity to work with a matchmaker. I envisioned maybe 10 people watching the show. I was like, it's going to be really boring. It's a very niche audience who wants to watch a docuseries about matchmaking. And it was a perplexing thing because it was kind of boring. As I taped all my scenes and days and days of taping, and I ended the show obviously with nobody. I was like, wow, my storyline was a bust. Fast forward 7 months later, the show's coming out. 6 days prior to the show coming out, we get word from Netflix that it's airing in all 143 countries.
You didn't know that in advance?
No, I thought maybe it would air in America and India, maybe Canada. I told my friends in London and Italy and stuff, I was like, you won't be able to see it. Let me figure out if I can get a streaming copy to you guys or something. I mean, it was literally a docu-series about matchmaking. I was like, that's so boring. And then the show comes out and I watch it and I'm like, what is this show about? And who's that woman? And wait a second, this isn't a docu-series and I didn't sign up for this and that's not true. And that's not even the real story. And I was like, I don't even like that Aparna up there. She's not very nice. And it was weird too, because the people that were already my friends are the men I went on dates with. And they were like, wait, who's that girl? Our dates went fine. We didn't leave the dates in love, but we left being friends. And
right.
What was that date? And I was like, I don't know what that date on the screen was, but it wasn't our date. So it was kind of like this very surreal, like disconnect. And then the story was already out there and it wasn't mine and I didn't identify with it. And so I went on this kind of bender of media press. I didn't mean to. The media just reached out to me and I said yes. I did not get a publicist. I did not do anything on my end to actively pursue journalists coming. They just came to me. They came to me in droves. They came to me in my DMs. They came to me through emails, through any way they could reach me. They were DMing my company email. Like it was weird. Wow. And I said yes. And in that way, I talk about it in the book, the media amplified my voice in so many beautiful ways. Most of the journalists, I think I did about 200 media outlets by the end of the stint. They were mostly women. They were on Team Aparna. They were tired of this trope of the ambitious woman that was, didn't deserve love or didn't deserve happiness in her personal life. And they were ready to tell my story for me. And so it was so easy for me to then pick up from that strength that they gave me to then write my own story. And I understood that very few people in comparison to a Netflix show will ever read this book. And the people who read this book, if we're being honest, already liked me on the show, whatever portrayal of me they saw on the show. So it's not like I was going to sway the audience with it. That was never the motivation, but it was still to say, I have agency and I have power and I'm going to do that with my words. It was a way for me to reclaim my narrative and to tell my story and to tell it on my terms with nobody else editing it or splicing it or misconstruing it. And if it just floats around this world and is read by a few people, I'm happy. If it's read by thousands or hundreds of thousands, I'm happy. The intent was never for its reach, but for its purpose of just telling my story.
And you certainly did. You shared so many different aspects of your story that started from, in the beginning, you talk about your experiences in Houston, going to Rice and some of the awesome experiences, but also challenges you had when you did semester at sea. But my favorite chapter is the chapter that talks about your mother and grandmother. Yeah. I loved that chapter because as a fellow South Asian woman, I feel like when people are talking about our mother and grandmother's generations, South Asian women tend to be portrayed as kind of weak and submissive and without a lot of agency. And while it's true that there were certain things they were limited for as far as having power and options go, I think it often we often don't hear about the strength that was required for them to do all that they did, particularly our mothers with immigrating and how difficult that was coming to a country on the opposite side of the world from where they grew up. And so I loved that chapter. And I just want to hear your thoughts on, when you think about your mother and grandmother, what are the lessons that you learned from them and why did you think it was so important to include them in your book?
I knew I wanted to include who my role models were, because I think, again, the root question was, how did you become this way? Well, we become the way we are often from our role models and our experiences and all those things. And so I was like, who do I write about? And I was like, who do I love? I'm like, oh, I love Michelle Obama. I love her. I was like, I love her. I love her. And I was like, that's not really the chapter. I was like, maybe the role models are closer to all of us. Maybe we should all pay homage to the women in our own families that went through their own struggles and came out on the other side. And maybe they bungled through it. Maybe they didn't have the resources of things such as education or money or access to technology to just FaceTime their family every day when they moved to a new country. I mean, they left their homes in ways that we will never leave. They left connections in a way that we will now never have to leave the same way. And I thought, let me tell their story so I can explain why I view the world in certain ways. And then let me hopefully prod others who read it to think about their own role models and that they are, in fact, the women who came right before us, or ones maybe we never met. Maybe you never met your great grandmother, but her story is probably in some way shaped yours. There's no way it couldn't. You exist in that lineage. And I wanted to kind of just take note that often we're looking so far away or so far up high for our role models that we don't even see that they're right next to us, that they're the people who raised us. And so for me, it was their stories of immigration. My own great-grandmother left Pakistan when the partition happened. My own grandmother left Bombay and went to Nigeria. My own mother left Nigeria, went to boarding school her whole life and then went to Dubai. I left Dubai and came to America. Like, we have this lineage of strength and adaptability and bravery. And so when the show hit and everyone was like, oh, your life must be over now, I'm like, are you kidding me? Look what they did. This is nothing. Like, cyberbullying on an international sphere is nothing compared to moving to Nigeria with my 1-year-old. Like, I have it easy. And so I think that was the purpose of bringing that role model home and encouraging others to bring theirs too, as they focused on it and reflected, hopefully.
Did your mom, I'm assuming, has read the book?
I think she's still working on it.
Oh,
I think she might have finished it. I don't know. She's like, I gave it to her months ago, and I don't know. Yeah, I think she's almost done.
Okay, she's working on it. I was going to ask you what her kind of response was to reading it, but we can do that the next time we talk. When
no, I mean, she's had a good response. She loves it. I mean, she loves my writing. She always has. So she's like, and she knows me. But I think it's interesting to read your adult child's version of her life. I think that must be a very surreal experience. She hasn't shared that with me, but I can imagine that is why she's moving slowly through it. She knows I went on semester at sea, but I don't know if she knows all of those things. She knows I went to Italy. I'm not even sure I told her I was heartbroken. She knows about the low moments of the cyberbullying, but not like the exact moment I got the death threat. I didn't run to her and tell her. I was too scared that she would be scared, and I wanted to protect her. We are adult children now. And so I think a lot of it is quite eye-opening for a parent, or even my closest friends. They're like, oh, I had no idea. It's them that I was most kind of weird about reading my story. The people that knew me. A stranger can read my story across the world and I don't care. A loved one can read it and I'm like, ooh.
Right, because you're sharing things that maybe you haven't told them or that you haven't told anyone, and that's always kind of it.
And I'm making it accessible now to anyone who wants to pick it up.
Right.
Like, my best friend's husband was listening to my audiobook and he's like, I had no idea, because I was always his wife's best friend. So he's like, wow, I had no idea that you were like this full rounded person with all these experiences. And I'm like, yeah, that's so awkward that you've listened to my life story.
Right. And you're like, what did you think of me? And what do you think of me now? And yes,
we'll never know.
I was going to say about the writing thing. I am an attorney, as was mentioned in the introduction, but I feel like being a lawyer zapped any ability for me to write in like any kind of way other than legal writing out. It just literally depleted it from my brain. So I gotta say, I was so impressed when I read your book, and I read it in 1 or 2 sittings because it was such a fast read. And your writing style was just excellent. It was so breezy and so just wonderful. And is that something, have you always been a writer, even, in your life before this book?
Yeah. It's funny. It started in 5th grade. I had this teacher that was obsessed with writing, and she would make us write every day for like 45 minutes, which is a lot for a 10-year-old to write. And she made us do things like theses. Like, she made us write a thesis in 5th grade. Like, all year we worked on a project that was of our own choosing, and like she would nurture us through it. And it's funny how we look back on that and you're like, wow, that shaped me. I probably need to find her in this world. I don't know where she is. I lived in St. Louis for 1 year, and she was my 5th grade teacher that 1 year in St. Louis. But yeah, I started writing then. I always loved it. I kept diaries my whole life, journals, whatever. My whole childhood and teenage years. And then in college, I started taking writing classes, and I took like a couple of workshops, like 3 maybe. And then I remembered the day I told my writing teacher, I'm not going to go get my master's in creative writing. I'm going to go to law school. And she literally started crying. She was like, are you sure? Like, she was tearing up. She's like, I don't want to see you throw this away. And I was like, well, I think you're the only one in the world who thinks I could ever write. And then I never wrote again. I never wrote again until I wrote this book. I didn't pick up a pen. I don't think I had a journal even after I started law school. I had literally not written since I was 22, when I was 35 or 36 when I started this. So for 14 years, I didn't write a thing, and then I wrote a book. So you can step away from the life that you lead and just start writing again. I have hope for us all.
I mean, I don't know that most of us can do that. That's really amazing. I feel like, I I don't know that anyone would want to read my book, because I think it would read like a legal brief rather than something that you can read next
I think
to.
you'd be surprised. I would love to read all of my friends' lives in this manner. I would love to read anyone's. And that's again, what I said, that was my intention behind it. So many women of color just think that their stories aren't going to be compelling enough. And I don't even know if they blame the way that they might write it. They also just don't think that the basis of their story is compelling enough. And I disagree. I think it is.
Yeah, well, your book was certainly fascinating, and I feel like anyone who reads it will learn a lot about you, but also find a lot that they can relate to, which could inspire them to say, hey, I might have a story worth sharing as well, which is a wonderful thing. Okay, let's talk about the show. I have a bunch of questions about the show that I want to ask you, but let's first start about what you knew going into it. So you mentioned you thought that it was a docuseries. Obviously, you knew it was about matchmaking. Did you know who the matchmaker was or anything about her?
No, I probably would have backed out if I did. I thought in my own head, I made a narrative about who the matchmaker was. I had applied to another matchmaker. She is US based. She's a former lawyer who couldn't find her own partner. She declined to take me on as a client when I was 27. She was she was about $14,000 at the time. Nowadays she's $35,000. Yeah. But I was 27 years old, and I was like, dating apps, Tinder had just started, Match.com was there, OkCupid was there, but that was it. And she basically told me to get on the dating apps, and I was horrified. I was like, no, I'm going to pay you $13,000. You find me a husband. She's like, honestly, my clientele is not for 27-year-olds. It's for like divorces and like older people. And like, I don't have anyone in my pool for you. I'm going to be very honest. I can't take your money. And then she gave me kind of like this weird slap in the face. So she was like, anyway, you're pretty and young. You'll find someone by yourself. So this was 27. Now we're at 34. And I'm thinking it's this woman. They told me it's an elite matchmaker. She's the only one for South Asians. She's now at that point about 25,000. And I'm like, great. I get to do a docuseries that nobody watches and get her for free this time, 7 years later. So when Seema comes to my door and knocks on it, you can't see my face. You see the back of me. Thank God. I wonder if they did that on purpose, because I was like, wait, who are you? You are not the woman I talked to. And I was 27, and I was literally mad about it. Like, I was like, wait a second. And I was like, she doesn't even live in America. And they're like, no, we know she's from India. And I'm like, why would you send someone from India to my door? And they were like, why would we not? And I was like, oh, like we are lost in translation. And then the next 2 days that I worked with her went so poorly, as I talk about in the book, both with my family and the things she said off camera, which were just honestly heinous. That I was like, I don't even want to deal with this woman anymore. And so began my relationship with Seema. Seema, who I then in the book talk about as a misogynist.
Well, I mean, it comes through in the show too. I mean, but that section in the book when you talk about first meeting her, and a friend was texting me before this saying that she was just dying at that section, because I think a lot of us who watched the show assumed you kind of knew what you were signing up for. I mean, so there are other Indian matchmakers. I guess I just assumed if it was an Indian matchmaker, you knew it was going to be someone from India. You didn't necessarily know any of that.
I was like, I live in Houston, Texas. It's that woman who's a lawyer from DC. I've already talked to her. I paid her $400 for a consult. She never took me on. She said I was too young. Now I'm the perfect age. It has been 7 years. I am now her clientele. I have become her clientele. And so I was like, yeah, that's why I signed up for the show, because I was like, there is no other matchmaker in America. I had never even thought that they would get in a matchmaker not from America. I don't know. Maybe that was a dumb thought, obviously, but.
Well, and the people that, I guess one thing that I wondered when I was watching the show is the portfolio of men that she's choosing from. I guess I was confused about that. Did Seema actually do you know if she had like a kind of robust portfolio of men that she was actually kind of exploring when she was trying to figure out who she would match you with, or was she kind of choosing from a limited pool based on who Netflix had given her?
So I have signed a lot of contracts that says I can't talk about certain things. So I don't know how to phrase this, but remember, the basis of the show is that we've all been vetted. I take you through the process briefly. I can't talk too much about it even in the book, but I take you through it briefly. But there's psychoval and casting, and you have to pass the psychoval. It's like 500 questions and an evaluation. We have to do like a sex ed education. We have to do background checks. So these are not people that she picked off the street. Like they all have to go through these liability, we're lawyers, go through the liability checks, right? And so think about that already, that everyone has already in a way been cast.
Mhm.
It's not like a portfolio.
Yeah, no, I understand what
I
you're
can't say
saying.
much more, but like if you think about it, where we really is the matchmaking at that point.
Right.
What if my perfect match actually can't pass a psych eval? It's possible.
It is
Very
it is
normal
possible.
people failed the psych eval. Very normal people that we know, and we don't know why they failed it, but they're very like people that we were like, oh yeah, they're fine. Like someone's cousin failed the psych eval. We're like, what did he
Oh, that's
do?
interesting.
Yeah, so like I am under the theory that I don't know what this vetting is, but
Maybe
so
we
no,
need
I don't know about Seema. I don't know about her services outside of the show. All I know is that my dates were all thankfully, had gone through the liability obstacle course and made it to the other side.
Right. Maybe we need to do a spin-off of all of the people who didn't make it onto the show and like where are they now? Who are they and where are they now?
I think we should question some people who made it on the show.
That is also, well, yes. I mean, I think a lot of us would be interested to see where some of the folks on the show are. I mean, that's one of the nice things about the book. You do mention that you are still friends with some of the people from the show. Good friends with them.
Yeah, very good friends. I have never even actually met Ankita, and we are like really good friends. I'm going to India next week for my book tour with HarperCollins there, and I'm going to Mumbai and New Delhi, and I'm meeting her for the first time, which is so weird because she feels like a sister to me. So like, how can you meet a sister for the first time? But that's what the show did, right? It put us in this collective experience that no one else will ever understand. In fact, now that my friends have been on the show and stuff, it's been so nice because I have someone in my life to share that with, just like that producer that I love, or that cameraman that's weird, or like the guy who's always like clicking his tongue a certain way. Like it's such like a nuanced place and thing to even try to describe to someone, that unless they're there in the room with you and can even get a glimpse of it, you're kind of isolated in the experience. And so it's been really special as time's gone on to have more people involved. As my friends in the season, you say my friends coming through, that was more special for me.
Yeah, well, because you talk in the book about how the show, because it ended up being like a reality TV show, did cast people into different categories of, I think you call them victims and villains, and how you became cast as a villain. So for you, in terms of, well, I guess let me ask you first, like, do you feel like that's just the recipe for reality TV shows? They have to have people fit different stereotypes, and is that something that you just didn't see coming when you signed up for the show?
Well, I didn't sign up for a reality show. So.
Right.
So yeah, no, I definitely didn't see it coming. Yeah, I have noticed that actually is like a very standard trope that happens, the victim and the villain. I mean, look at Diti on Love is Blind, who is being exalted to demigod status for being the victim of Sheikh's ways. I think she obviously deserves it. I'm not talking about her deserving of it or not, but it's such a good polarizing play, right? Hate him, love her more. Hate him more, love her more. Like it's very interesting to watch. And I watch it as a spectator, and I watch it understanding that I don't know these people, and no one is as good or as bad as they ever seem. Although I'm not sure about Sheikh. He might be an outlier because he's been coming out a lot and talking a lot. He's like potentially an outlier.
But he's doubling down on the villain label. Like I think he really is enjoying it.
Yeah, or he's just really ready to be outspoken about it, and is defending himself to the death, and has a tactic that he thinks is going to work for him. I don't know. I can't delve too deep into Sheikh, but I think him doing that is exalting her more, and that is the polarization of the victim villain edit, and it's so apparent in everything now. If you just watch it with a discerning eye, you're like, oh, they're trying to make her the victim. He's going to be the villain. Her mom is going to be the villain, and it's just too easy. But yeah. They do it because we consume it that way. And I think that's important to realize too, that if we start consuming differently or asking for different things, they will stop doing it. They're not doing it because they love it. Some editor who's like, he probably wants to make us more nuanced, but that's not what sells. And his job is to sell us something. And it's interesting. I think Love is Blind tried something new this season, right? They tried like body diversity and like racial diversity and all this stuff, and people loved it. So now they'll do more of it. So I feel like it's up to us as a society to to rally against what we love and what we hate. So like when the articles came out in my favor, the thought was maybe more and more people will see this trope for what it is. And maybe the next time they won't do it so easily, because it turns out even the media is against it. So when the media turns against editing, well then, like, is every villain going to come out with like articles called In Defense of Aparna from Indian Matchmaking, or the hero we actually needed, or like, and this was what, like the New York Times, like this was Washington Post, this was Vulture, Betches, these were not tiny little publications that are like, hear us, say this. They were like, we are badass, big bosses, like, let me tell you what we think. And I think it was a moment. Someone wrote an article, Aparna walks so Dipti could run.
Ooh.
Is that true? I don't know. Did I?
Well, I do feel like there's, in some ways, the way that society, culture has responded to Dipti for being really strong and knowing who she was and what she's worth was the exact opposite of how people initially responded to you for those very same qualities of being confident in who you are and what you deserved. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's just, it's partially, I'm sure, because of exposure to you and your journey, but also just maybe a reflection of like the differences in audiences watching it, kind of the change in times. I'm not sure, but there is a noticeable difference between how both of you, both Indian women, both on Netflix shows, were kind of treated for the same quality of just knowing your worth.
Yeah, she was like, I choose myself, I'm not going to settle. And I was like, I choose myself, I'm not going to settle. And they were like, that girl's a B. And they were like, oh, we love this girl. And I'm like, but it's the editor who chose that. The editor could have made me a shero too, but they chose not to. So I think it's very interesting. And I'm watching more reality TV in a discerning way now and trying to see these trends. I think you might be right. It might be a societal trend and it can move as quickly as 2 years. Like, right. This came out like a little post Me Too. Now we are like 3 years past that. And we're into more, talk about pay equality and all of these things about equality. We're progressing as a society, and I'm hopeful that our media catches up to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the phrase "be like Aparna" started to trend, which must be pretty cool. What does that mean to you? Just the phrase, like if someone says, "I want to be like Aparna," or I should be like Aparna, like what do you hope they take that to mean?
That was a tweet that was from a woman in a small little town somewhere in Bengal, and she teaches 8-year-olds. She's an English teacher for 8-year-olds, and she actually reached out to me when that started trending because Netflix India did a whole little segment on her, and she was like, "I want to talk to you before I do this segment. I don't want to misrepresent you. I feel like you've had enough of that." And we started WhatsApping, and we're friends now. And she was interesting because she was like, "I sat in India watching you, and I thought, we should all be like you. We should all stand up to any auntie or any societal like pressure and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I deserve, and I believe I deserve it." And she was dead on. I mean, we should all do that. That would be a great moment for women if they could just kind of be like Aparna. So Priyanka came up with that. That's her name. She believes that's what I stood for. And I feel like there was a moment in India too, where that it was the predominant emotion for me. They loved me in India in a way that any other country didn't. And I thought about why. And it's because so many of them have a Seema auntie, and they would tell me about that. And they would tell me about arranged marriage and colorism and casteism and being a lawyer and how that is looked poorly upon. Seema at one point says she doesn't like my talking pattern. So many women around the world were like, they don't like my talking pattern either. And I was like, I've never even heard of that.
What is a talking pattern? I don't even know what that means.
I think it's like being very clear, concise, direct in the way that you speak. Like, I was like, I paid a lot of money at a lot of good schools to be able to speak like this, like, and you don't like it?
Right.
Like, I think I'm okay with it, And so it's interesting to see the female response in India. I feel like feminism in America is maybe ahead in a certain way. They are still like, damn the man, burning bras, like Gloria Steinem, like they're in a fight and a revolution that looks nothing like ours. And I didn't even know about that discrepancy until I became such an icon to them over there for doing nothing, for like sitting in my living room being like, I don't really like that boy and I don't want to date him. And they're like, she's an icon. And I'm like, not really. I'm just saying I'm not sure I like that guy and I would like another match. But they viewed it differently. They viewed it from the lens of being beaten down by these same themes that Seema was like projecting on me, these misogynistic themes. They saw it in their own lives, their whole lives. And they were finally, for the first time, seeing someone on Netflix on an international stage saying no more.
Right. Right. It was a message that I feel like a lot of people, whether you're in India, in the United States, or anywhere else, needed to hear, needed to see. I mean, it is like there is something very powerful about seeing a woman on television say exactly what she wants when it comes to a relationship, even if it, could mean that this person that is intending on matchmaking you has these, weirdly judgmental, misogynistic views of you. You still stuck with who you were. You didn't try to change that. And that's
I'm
why
very lucky too, right? I come from an environment that supports me in doing that. Like we read in the book about the interactions. I don't want to give away if no one's read it, about the interactions, seeing my husband, my mother, and my sister and my brother-in-law off camera. And it was astounding to me that anyone could speak to my family like that, or speak like that in general. And it's really telling that my family also thought it was horrifying, and that they were like, you can leave the show. You don't need to be here. So many others would say, oh, you've already started this. You never know. Give that auntie a chance. You didn't mean it. And my family was like, no, nobody speaks about you like that. And no one speaks to us like this. And this is unacceptable. So I'm proud of the place that I come from and the environment that supports me. And I know a lot of women don't have that.
Yeah. Well, it also must be really incredible to hear from just women, people all over the world, like what they're just DMing you or somehow contacting you, just sharing their experiences with you. That's so cool.
And they still do. Like today, I got like this lengthy one from a woman who left an abusive marriage with kids recently, with her 2 kids. And she was like, I was partially inspired by what I saw of you. I'd never seen Indian Matchmaking until a week ago. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But like on Netflix, I guess things live forever. And it started trending again after season 2 of Love is Blind. So there was like a weird uptick with our show with Love is Blind too. I think when you watched it, they suggested Indian Match. I don't know what happened, but we did have a weird uptick after that season. And so maybe she found it. But yeah, women from all over the world were talking to me about matchmakers. The other day they announced season 3 of Indian Matchmaking. And they also announced that Seema's coming back for season 3. And then they also announced that they have Jewish Matchmaking. That is a franchise spinoff. And I thought that was really interesting that they are exploring matchmaking in other cultures. And I heard from a lot of Jewish women, heard from a lot of Korean women. They have something called dasan, which is a matchmaking over there. And it turns out that matchmaking in general is quite common in many communities, especially in religious communities. I believe there's rumors of a Muslim matchmaking coming out in the franchise too. And I think it's because matchmaking is something that's existed forever and is going to be fraught forever. So it makes for good TV.
Yeah. And I think for those of us who watched shows like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, what we saw on Indian Matchmaking was a totally different type of cast than we were used to seeing when it came to love stories on mainstream TV. And so, but that actually takes me to a question in our chat. By the way, if anyone who's watching has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, which is, what has been your most memorable interaction with a fan? Be good or bad. Most memorable.
Most memorable. I like it's interesting. I like when I meet fans that are like outside of what I think the show would attract. So I think it's really interesting when I'll like see someone came up to me once at a restaurant and was like, oh, I absolutely loved you, but can you come to my table? My dad absolutely loves you. And this very elderly Indian man, like in a wheelchair, like at this restaurant, was like, Beta, I absolutely love you. And I was like, what? And he was like, I couldn't stop watching you. I watched the show twice. I cheered every time you came on screen. And I was so touched. He was like, I hope I raised my daughters to also sit, in front of that matchmaker and say the same thing. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like right now, you're like an icon to me. This like old, like maybe 80+ year old man in a wheelchair was like, you were my favorite. And I thought, these are the fans I want. These are the fans that touch my heart. I also did a lot of cameos after, and now I'll meet people and they're like, oh, you were a part of our wedding. You were in our Sangeet video, because that was the time of COVID weddings. So everyone was getting cameos for like these like medleys and like, or like these COVID Zoom wedding things. And I was a part of so many people's weddings and sangeets, and they show me clips of their videos and I'm in it. And I'm literally in this office, sometimes like in my pajamas, and I know I'm wearing pajamas. I'm like, oh God, didn't know that was going to a sangeet. So it's the way I like touched the weirdest places of people's lives. I touched their parents or their grandparents. I touched their sangeet or their wedding day. I infiltrated in weird ways, and I think that's so incredible.
Yeah, that is. I don't know if I ever told you that I got a cameo from Vinny. Is that his name?
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. My ex-boyfriend, who we were still on good terms, had bought me a little, or I don't know what the word is, but a cameo from him, and it was hilarious. And I remember showing it to my family, and my parents were so confused because they were like, wait, you know him? Because they watched the show. And I was like, no, like, it's just this whole app called Cameo.
Oh, can I tell? He's single and he's epic. He's so good. He's the kindest, favoriteest person. When my book came out, I had that party that night, and he showed up with roses in his backpack and a copy of my book because he needed me to sign it at the bar that night. And I was just like, are you like the most supportive, kind person in the world? Like, you kidding me? Nobody bought a book to the bar that night. Everybody bought like champagne. Like, he's just awesome. So
yeah, well, I love that you guys are all still in touch. I feel like when I follow you on Instagram and I see pictures of you with other people from the cast, it's nice that you're all like friends, and despite what, you know, being on a show together. And I feel like that can also sometimes lead to drama, and there's of course like drama intended to be created. It's nice that you guys are still in touch.
Family. Some of us love each other more than others. We all have our own little relationships. I mean, we have our little quirks. Some people are in fights, you know, like we're family. We're family. Yeah.
Tell us what, I always love asking people this. So you were a lawyer, you've, I guess, at least for now, left the law. You're not practicing as a lawyer anymore. What is like a typical day in the life for you like? And yeah, just generally, I know right now you're in the middle of the book tour, but just take us through what a typical day is like.
So let's go through yesterday. I did a morning show on Zoom. And then I talked to my publicist, and we strategized for our morning shows that we have and our afternoon shows live on Monday. So I have to like physically go to a location. I had to update my Dropbox with all of the press for these shows. So I have to supply them pictures and videos, a copy of the book, a bio of myself, a short list of what's going on in the book, a synopsis. Often I have to give them questions or key topics. So each media company or outlet has like a request from you. So you have like this ongoing Dropbox going on. So I updated the Dropbox. That took like an hour. And then, because they wanted very specific things. And then I had, what did I have after that? I had an interview, a podcast interview. And then I had to get dressed and go to an event that was being thrown for me. So it was at a boutique. I had to get there early. I wanted to support the boutique, so I had to buy something from the boutique. Then I was at the book event all night. We did a Q&A. You know, just like this one, we opened up to the audience and then we mingled. I got home and I had to speak to my India publishing team at HarperCollins and do a phone call with them at 10 p.m. because of the time difference. And we're planning out my itinerary. And then I have other projects that are going on right now. So after that, I had another call with India at 11 for a project that I guess I can't talk too much about, but I'm working on something else in India. And that's a typical day. It's a lot of publicists and press and juggling different projects and things. It's not one thing anymore. And today obviously looked different. I did a radio show in studio right before this. I had to come home and apply to an e-visa to go to India. I have to shop for my family in India. Everybody wants to be one of the iPhones I take over. I don't know if you know this, but you can only take 2 iPhones to India. And every day is just a marathon, but every day is exciting. It's definitely nothing like I ever used to live before. I used to say I was so busy. I would volunteer with the Junior League. I would go to work all day. I would go out to happy hours with my friends. I would date. And like, this is 10x busy. Like, it's also the way that the day goes. It's not routine. So like, you're constantly using mental energy to juggle things that are being thrown at you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not for the faint of heart. And I'm not sure how long I can do it. I'm on year 2 of doing it, and I don't know how much longer I can last, but maybe this is a new norm. I think it might be, and I might have to get used to that. So we'll see.
Definitely different than being a lawyer behind a desk for 8 hours a day.
Today.
Okay, another question was, as an American, I always assumed arranged marriage meant the couple hadn't gotten a choice. You talk a bit in the book about how it means a variety of things in different cultures. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I never knew I would have to become like an anthropological expert on arranged marriage, but it's what everybody wants to talk to me about. So I quite quickly, when I was doing that first round of press, back when the show came out, I realized like, I better sit down and think about this, like really think about this. And I was like, how do I take all of the experiences of these people on the show, right? The 7 primaries that are being followed and define arranged marriage for all of us. And then I realized I couldn't. And that was actually the answer, that arranged marriage, like I say in the book, is about a unique definition per person. It is as unique as our fingerprints. You and I both grew up in Houston, across town from each other, maybe a few years apart, if even, and you and I would define it differently, even though one would say that we should basically see it the same. And I break down in the book 4 simple categories that I think really define your definition. And it's things like your parents and your family and what's normal to them or what they say. Like I say, my mom heard Seema talking, my mom's older than Seema and was like, this woman's backwards. We don't need this. So that's my family's influence, right? And then I have my own ideas of love and the relationships I've been in, the heartbreaks, the way I view dating and the way I view my voice in dating. What choices do I have? If you look at Akshay, he's portrayed, I don't know what he's like in real life. He's portrayed as having no voice in his own dating life. I am portrayed as having too much of a voice in my dating life. And in fact, Seema says those things off camera to my mom as well. And then you look at your peer group. I grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood in New York, in Houston, and Ankita grew up in a Delhi private school, and Pradhaman grew up in Bombay. And the ways our peers view relationships and in marriages, I mean, none of my peers, when they were 18 or 13, even said, oh, I'm going to get an arranged marriage. Probably half of Ankita's did. Maybe 90% of Pradhamans are like, yeah, my mom and dad will find me someone. Like that was a norm to them. That was like accepted by them. And then of course, there's your larger society. Like in America, it's just not done as much. In India, it's still commonplace. And so if we take all these factors and break them down and define them, there's an absolute reason that each definition is so different. How could it not be? Each one of us is so different, when not only our families, but our regional differences, our country, are we in the diaspora? So I don't try to be an ambassador for arranged marriage anymore, but I do try to tell people, be flexible in your own definition of it, even as you learn from our experiences and maybe go through your own or don't. There's got to be an understanding that it's so much bigger and varied than we believed.
Yeah, I related a lot to your description in the book about the different definitions and what it means to you, because to me, like, my parents had what I think of as an arranged marriage, and so that is what my definition was, where you maybe meet someone once, if at all, before you get married. And then I know that there are a lot of people, even some of my cousins, who describe themselves as having had arranged marriages, but they dated, they got to know each other for a couple of weeks. It was just that they were set up. So I think you're totally right.
Some people got to say no. Some people had like arranged marriage, but like one of my aunts is like, yeah, I said no to 22 guys that walked through my house trying to get my hand in marriage. There was still arranged. She barely knew, who she actually married, my uncle, but she picked him. She picked him for specific purposes, even if it was a really hasty pick. And so, is arranged marriage that you have no say in it? Is it that you get only 1 week to have a say in it? Is it that you get 22 matches or Pradhaman got 150? It'll never look the same.
Right, right. Another person in the audience asked if you would try any kind of matchmaking again.
Definitely. I think
this didn't scar you enough.
No, it did not.
Okay.
I am very rational. I think I got a bad matchmaker. I don't think I got the raw end of matchmaking. I think I found someone who was not aligned with my values and my beliefs and was not on my team. If I could find a matchmaker that was aligned with my values and beliefs and was on my team and was ready to listen to me and respected me, it to me is a very business transaction. It is not dirtied or muddied by their own beliefs. It's about listening to me and giving me feedback, if you're an expert, but in a civil way and not a derogatory way. I feel like that's just simple though. I was a lawyer for so many years. Like, I have clients, I speak to them, I advise them, I'm the expert, I advise them, and they make their own decisions. And I sometimes disagree, but I am at their service. And I need a matchmaker who understands that she or he is at my service. And Also, I have no tolerance for casteism, colorism, or misogyny or sexism. That can be a part of it. I don't think I'm asking for the world. I think I can find a matchmaker like that. I just need someone who's basically barely decent.
That
just
seems
barely
pretty reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you currently dating? Is that something you're willing to share?
Yeah. So I am not currently dating anyone in like particular. I'm open to going on dates. I did have to get off the dating apps. It was getting really just defeating and ugly. Like a lot of people were trying to go on dates with me because they want to like tell their friends they went on a date with me. A lot of people were fame mongering. A lot of people were thinking I was a catfish. It was just unproductive. And I don't think I'm famous, but the response I got was not one of anonymity in any way. And so now I'm just very open with the people I meet, even if they're random people. And I'm like, hey, do you know anybody? Because I would rather be introduced through my network. So like the other day, a journalist reached out to me to do a story on me for like a huge magazine. And I'm so happy, but she topped it off with, I have a brother-in-law in Miami and he's this age and he does this. And I really think you guys would be a good fit. Can I introduce you? And then a woman who moderated a book event for me in California a few days ago was like, I know this is really weird, but I flew to DC from LA last week and it's 6 hours long. And I talked to this young man the whole time. I'm married with 2 kids. She was South Asian also. And I really liked him. And he was flying to DC for a date. And he's handsome and this is his name. And here are all the things I know about him. And she showed me his picture and she's like, I want to introduce you. And I was like, yeah, this man's gorgeous. Like he's so handsome. Like, sure, sounds good. And he said, yeah. So I'm using my network and I'm being very open to it. I'm not chasing it though, on the other hand. So someone's like, did you follow up with the girl from that magazine? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And if she wants to set me up and she's ready to do it, then I'm more than open and I will initiate it. Even if she gives me his contact and needs me to reach out to him, I'm more than happy, but I'm also going to let it come to me. I have a great astrologer right now too. And she was like, you're meeting your husband in your 10th house, which is your house of career and public image. So just focus on your career and your public image and he will come. And I was like, you know what? I don't even know if that's true, but I like the way it sounds. So I'm going to go with
that too. I like that for you. That means you can just kind of live your life and do your thing and he will come to you.
Yeah. Apparently we're going to even work together one day. Whoever this mystery man is, he's already in my orbit. Somebody I know already knows him. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Someone I know does know him. And I'm just going to keep living my best life and pursuing my new career and doing all these cool projects that are on my plate. And I think I will meet him. I really do.
I think you will too. I know we all hope that you do. And this will be our last question, which is, knowing what you know now about your portrayal on the show and the amount of opinions you got on social media, all of the chaos that ensued, would you still do the show if you had to do it over?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Season 2 is coming out. I can't say if I'm on it or not. I can't say yes and I can't say no. But season 2 is coming out this year. And I think if someone were to say, would you want to share your story and continue sharing your story, I would be down to do it too. I think that there is a vulnerability and an openness to it. And now I would go in with open eyes on what that meant. And I would agree to it. And I would go back and do season 1 again and live that same experience again to get to this place of freedom and growth that I'm living in right now and existing in right now. And I would probably do a season 2 if I could or would. Stay tuned.
Do we know when season 2 is being released? Is that
Netflix's press release said this year? So okay. Probably, I don't know, September, October, November, December.
So we'll have something to binge in the fall / winter sometime. Yeah.
They're usually accurate when they say, 2022. They mean it. They don't like push it.
They don't push it to 23. We're all going to be waiting.
Yeah, I want to watch it too.
I mean, but I feel like and kind of in response to that question, like while you did have, I know, some really tough times, which you talk about very honestly in the book, like your life also seems so incredible right now. It's just, you're doing so many different things. You are traveling the world. You were connecting with so many people. It really is inspiring to see what you have done with this experience. There are a lot of different paths you could have taken, and the fact that you sort of took what happened to you, owned it, spun your truth to it, took advantage of the platforms that you had when it came to the media and to other things to share your story, and to now put out this wonderful book is so inspiring. I know that you've inspired me and tons of women and people everywhere. So
Yeah.
thank you. And for those of you guys who haven't yet ordered it, be sure to order Aparna's book. She's Unlikable. It's available everywhere that you can get books. And it's just such a wonderful read. And thank you guys all for joining us.
Yes, and support your local bookstores, your independent ones.
Yes.
Like Katie Budget.
Yes, we have tons of copies in stock right now, guys. So you can, if you're not local to us, you can order through our website. We'll get them shipped out tomorrow. Or if you are local to us, just stop in and see us. We've got them right in the front on our events display.
Oh.
Thank you, ladies. I feel like we've been saying inspiring and inspirational a lot, but one of the things I love the most about your book is obviously it is not my lived experience, but just as a woman, it was a beautiful message. It was so inspirational. And I love that this conversation had exactly that same tone. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, attendees, you will also very much enjoy her book.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support too. I love my local bookstores and this meant a lot to me. And thank you, Amrutha, for hosting. You were incredible.
You are welcome. Thanks, everyone. Hope everyone has a good rest of the weekend.
Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Bye.